Welcome to STEM Spark, a podcast dedicated to helping teenagers explore different careers in STEM. My name is Mira, and I am your host. As a high schooler who is currently struggling with determining my future career path, I created this podcast to learn about different careers and fields within STEM while helping others do the same. I hope you guys are excited for today's episode. It will be a great one. Today's guest is Dr. Chiara Manzini. Dr. Manzini is Associate Professor in the Department of Neuroscience and Cell Biology at Rutgers Medical School. So I'll now turn it over to Dr. Manzini to introduce herself further.
Hi, Mira. Thank you for having me, and hi, everyone. So I am an associate professor at a medical school, and so my job primarily focuses on running a research lab, and so doing discovery in neuroscience, and then at the medical school teaching medical students, graduate students, and in general participating into the life of the university.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. So I wanted to start by kind of asking you how you got interested in neuroscience and science in general. When you were younger, like even before college, was science something that you were always interested in, or was this something that kind of came out along the way?
I was always interested in science. That was always my thing, actually. So when I was in elementary school, I wanted to be an astronaut. And then I'm going to date myself. When Jaws came out, the movie about the great white shark, I wanted to be the scientist guy.
Okay.
Like, I wanted to be on a boat looking for great white sharks. And then in between, as I was going through high school, I became really interested in biology. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a biological scientist.
Yeah, totally. So then, like, looking forward into your college experience, did you major in biology, and how was that decision?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Italy.
Okay.
In Italy, education is very structured.
Got it.
So at the end of middle school, you choose what you want to do. So you can go to a pre-college high school, you can go to a technical high school, and the pre-college high school is divided in science, classics, or languages. And so I went to a science high school.
Got it.
Which kind of like sets you up. You just study a lot more science. And a little bit less like Greek and Latin than everybody else. And so then I knew I wanted to do biology, and my family really wanted me to do medicine, but I didn't want to do medicine because I really wanted to see what was inside things. So I really want to do biology. And so that's what I enrolled. And there's no majors. You just sign up for biology, and then you follow that course of studies. And then you can pick more specialty topics. And so that's how then I became really interested in genetics. And that's what I decided to do, genetics and neuroscience.
Was it at all difficult or stressful to pick something like so early on, or was for you like it wasn't as bad because you already knew?
For me, it wasn't as bad because I wanted to do biology, right? I mean, that's what I wanted to do, and I was interested in genetics, and so actually, I picked the university that allowed you to study genetics the earliest because, as I said, it's very structured. In Italy, it's a national system. You usually go to the university closer to your house,
right?
Because they're all run by the government. But I went away, which is very uncommon.
Got it. Yeah, what initially like drew you into genetics? Like, how was that interest kind of sparked from?
I was just interested in like how the DNA informs, like, how, I mean, we have almost the same, like you and I almost have the same DNA, like we're 99.9% identical, but then we're different, and there's like different traits, and then DNA can make plants, and DNA can make bugs.
Totally, it's super interesting. Yeah,
it was just like, wow, this like one molecule that generated all of these like very, very, very diverse things.
Yeah, totally.
And so that's what was fascinating.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really cool. Genetics is really fascinating. So, following your college experience, like what happened next? How was the process going to grad school, and when did you end up coming to the U.S.?
So I was always interested in the US. Like as part of my undergraduate process, we have to do a 2-year thesis, which is
Okay.
similar to the honors thesis that students do here. But we have to spend a substantial amount of time in the lab. And so one of the more advanced graduate students was like, you would be a great person to basically go to the US for like a PhD. And his girlfriend at the time had just gotten into a PhD program in the US at Columbia. And so she helped me a lot to kind of like figure out what the application was like, what you
Hmm.
had to do. And so I applied at the end of my last year. Like you usually apply for graduate school in December, for admission the following September.
Hmm.
And so in my last year in college, I applied, and I was lucky that I was able to get in as an international student. So I graduated in July, and in August, I moved to New York City.
Wow. That's really exciting, I bet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun. It was
So,
scary, but it was fun.
definitely, definitely, especially being international, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, I when you mentioned your like thesis thing that you had to do, can you like elaborate more about that and what that was like in undergrad?
Yeah, it was very intense because
Mhm.
for and I think now it's different, but back then you basically had to be in a lab for like 2 years, and so at the end of your third year, like you picked your thesis advisor, and then you had to generate what is more similar here to a master's thesis. And you basically go and you go to the lab, and they teach you how to do research, and
Mhm.
usually you work with somebody senior. In my case, I was working with a PhD student,
Got it.
and they teach you to do things. But I had my region of the genome at the time. We were still trying to pull out pieces of the genome, and so it was just a lot of DNA extractions and like trying to figure out where the genes were,
Mhm.
what they were doing.
Yeah.
And it was a disease, so it was a genetics lab trying to identify diseases on the X chromosome. And so I was looking on ovarian failure, which is like premature ovarian failure, which
Mhm.
is a form of infertility where the ovaries stop working when you're young. So when you're in
Mhm.
your 20s and 30s, so it's way, way, way before menopause, and trying to find the genes uh, for that.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah, that's a really cool experience. Um, yeah, cool. Moving back to your experience as in your PhD, when you're working on your PhD here, um, what did that look like? Like, how was graduate school for you, and how was that whole process?
I mean, graduate school was fun and hard and intense,
Mhm.
as it's supposed to be. Um, I when I came, I had done genetics,
Mhm.
and I was
Mhm.
interested in neuroscience. So I I really wanted to figure out what genes do. And so I wanted to find like a good cell biology, like neuronal cell biology lab, because I was interested in the brain, and I was at Columbia in the neurobiology and behavior PhD program.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's kind of like what I did, and what I liked is that the PhD programs here allow you to do rotations, and so you go to different labs. You can try, you try 3 different labs
Mhm.
during your first year, and you take classes. Um, and so we took a lot of like very advanced classes with
Mhm.
my classmates, and then you do little research experiences in different labs,
Oh,
and then
that's really cool.
you pick what you want to do. And so even if you don't know exactly what you're going to research, right, the combination is like you want to find you want to figure out what you want to learn and what kind of mentor you can work with and what it's like to work in that particular lab.
Yeah.
And so I was very lucky because I ended up in like one of the really great neuronal differentiation, neuronal development, and cell biology labs. And so it was really fun to like learn a lot. And my
Yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, that whole process seems really interesting, and I've just never heard much about it. And yeah, following your PhD, what was like the next step? Like, where did you go from there, and like, how did that work?
Yeah, so usually, I mean, just to give like some frame of reference, right? So in your PhD, you basically learn how to run a project.
Right.
You become more of an expert in your topic, in like your particular, um, the particular topic of your project. And so for biomedical sciences, the next step is to do what's called a postdoctoral
Right.
fellowship. And because before you run your own research lab, you get additional training.
Hmm.
And so I had done, I had the genetics, I had learned how to do the cell biology. And so I was looking for a place where I could do both, right?
Got
Because
it.
now you have this like double expertise
Hmm.
that can help you answer like specific questions. And so, I applied to a few places where that double expertise was, and then I ended up in a lab at the Harvard Medical School umbrella, um, that ended up being at Boston Children's
That's so
Hospital,
cool.
where it was a specific laboratory that was working on neurogenetics. And so finding all of these families with the children where development of the brain was severely disrupted, and the brain just didn't look right, and figuring out all of the genes that were involved in causing these neurodevelopmental disorders.
Hmm.
And the thing that's interesting is that not only it is relevant to the families because you can figure out what's wrong and tell them what's wrong,
Right.
but also the gene that is mutated does something really important for the development of the brain, right?
Hmm.
And so it also helps you to understand how the human brain is put together. You can have a direct impact with identifying the mutations and
Hmm.
providing some help to the families, even just to understand what
Hmm.
is wrong and what is going on.
Seems
Was
so cool.
Yeah, that was basically, it's like you've trained for a very long time. I always say when I graduated, because I went continuously from like to undergrad to grad school. I graduated from, let's see, the 21st grade. No, it was more than the 21st grade. It was just, no,
Cool.
yeah, I think it was. Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness, that's a lot of school.
yeah. It was just like, at some point, you're like, I just graduated from,
Wow.
wait, 13, 5, 18, 6. No, the 24th.
Oh my gosh,
I
that's so
graduated. I,
much.
I graduated from the 24th grade.
Wow. That's funny. That's a lot of school.
Um, um,
Definitely.
and then at that stage, that's really when you decide, right? Because if you want to continue and do research, you basically have to find your scientific question that you're going to
Mhm.
pursue in your
Mhm.
own, right? So then you're going
Yeah.
to be, so if you want to be the boss and you want to do
Mhm.
whatever you're interested in, then you find what you're interested in and apply for jobs at universities and say, this is what I want to do, and
Yeah.
this is what the next 5-10 years of my lab are going to look like, and see if they say, okay, you can come and knock yourself out and do
Mhm.
it. And they give you the money to,
Yeah. Yeah.
to do it.
Hmm. That's super interesting. Yeah, thank you for like telling me about that because I didn't know. Um, Yeah, I feel like a lot of the things that you're mentioning are things that people might know in theory, but I think it's really beneficial to hear it from someone who's had these experiences. So,
Yeah, and in general, not everybody knows what's the inner working
of
of all
course,
of these things.
yeah,
So
yeah, awesome. Um, so yeah, I mean, you mentioned if you want to do what you're interested in, like there's like you have to figure that out for yourself, and then you can apply for it. How did you like determine what you were interested in that, and then what did that end up being for you, like specifically?
so um so it's interesting because I tend to be to function. I tend to not be single-minded.
Mhm.
So both during my PhD and my postdoc, I always had different projects. I always worked on multiple things
Right, totally.
in parallel because I was like, oh, this is cool. I'll do this, and so this is cool.
Yeah.
And the two things that I picked in my postdoc are still the things that I'm doing in my lab, like 10 years later.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
And so my lab is split.
Mhm.
One half of my lab works on these very severe malformations, brain malformations that are linked to muscular dystrophy.
Mhm.
And so multiple tissues affected
Mhm.
early during development, where we're still doing human genetics and we use zebrafish as a research model.
Oh, wow.
And the other half of my lab instead works on intellectual disability and autism,
Okay.
and in particular, how girls are less affected than boys, or less frequently affected than boys. Because in general, if you know um, someone with a child with autism, most likely will be a boy because
Mhm.
there's a 4-to-1 diagnostic ratio. And so the other half of my lab actually works on autism and uses mouse as a
Okay. That's really cool.
as a research model. And
Mhm.
those are both projects that I picked up, when I was a postdoc. And
Mhm.
the issue with genetics is that you find a gene and then you don't know what you're gonna get. You don't know
Mhm.
what the gene does, right? You and then you have to figure out what it does. And sometimes you're interested in what it does, but in both cases, I was interested in the mechanisms of these different diseases. Um, and the way you keep them going is that you have to keep getting money from the government to
Mhm.
study them. And if you don't, then you can't go on. If
Right. Right.
you keep getting money, if you keep finding new things and getting money, then you keep working. You keep working on that.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's so cool. Those both sound so fascinating. Just like
Yeah,
as
it's
projects.
been fun. They're different, and so I like the challenge of doing different things, like thinking
Totally.
about different questions.
Yeah.
And some people really don't like that. They want
Mhm.
to do just like one thing, and so there's a lot of labs that do just one thing. There are labs that do a lot of things,
Sure.
that just spread out in like different direction. It kind of
Mhm.
depends on how you like to think.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's awesome. Um, so now like moving more towards like today and what your
Mhm.
job kind of looks like now, what does a typical day look like for you?
It's
Yeah.
it's easier if I tell you what the week looks
Sure.
like.
Yes, that's perfect.
So I like to have most of my meetings on Mondays or Fridays.
Mhm.
And so Monday, I'll have wall to wall meetings with the people in my lab.
Okay.
Or Friday morning, it's the same because to get everybody. And so you start the day and then you have a 1 hour meeting, a 1 hour meeting, a 1 hour meeting, a 1 hour meeting. Sometimes with a small group,
Mhm.
if there are people working on the same project, and we discuss that.
Mhm.
And then on Fridays, we also have our lab meeting, which is like everybody in the lab gets together and one person presents to everybody else. So those tend to be more meeting days
Mhm.
sometimes. If I'm writing a grant or writing a paper, I like to keep Wednesdays and Thursdays for writing because when you're
Okay.
writing, you need a chunk of time that
Mhm.
where you really can sit and like think. But then I'll have multiple other meetings, unless I'm teaching. And then if I have a teaching, depending on when my teaching is scheduled, then I'll have to go show up um, and teach. And then there's a lot of meetings. Once that you become a professor, there's a lot of meetings for the university, where you have to do administrative things. And so meet with other professors and discuss what's going on, either in the medical school or in the university, or, it's just like, and then you meet with other researchers. And so, yeah, it's my job is a lot of meetings. It's a lot of writing, a lot of reading. And also, now that we're back into traveling, also a pretty good amount of traveling.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool. It seems like a good mix of like a lot of different things. Right.
Yeah, it's very variable. It's like, it's not, you just don't sit and like do one thing.
Right.
And also it's very flexible, in the sense that depending on what you have to do, I mean, you show up and leave pretty much whenever you want, but also you kind of like work whenever.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I get that. I realized I didn't like ask about your teaching experience and what that's like. So what do you teach?
So because I'm in a medical school, so that's one thing that a lot of people don't know. Sometimes even the people that are training to become a professor, that being a professor is very, very different depending on where you teach and at what level you teach. And so if you're teaching college, it's very different from what I do. Because if you teach in college, you're teaching a course, right? Medical school is very different because we are primarily tasked with doing research. And so we are kind of parachuted into courses, teaching a lecture every now and then, or teaching the initial part of the medical school curriculum.
Got it.
And so my department is in charge of anatomy and histology. So I teach histology to the medical students, and not just the brain, the whole body, right? So I have to know the histology of the lung, the histology of the bladder, the histology, it's just like of the skin, and the one of the brain and the muscle, which is the one that I know. And basically, I would teach that to the medical students, to the graduate students. But in general, my teaching load is around like 20-30 hours per semester. So it's not much.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah, I guess I didn't register that like teaching medical school would be different, but that obviously makes sense. So it's super, of course. Okay. So thinking of like everything that you do, what's your favorite part?
My favorite part, there's two things. So one is really just the communication, right? So it's just like talking to other scientists, like talking science, going to conferences, listening to what other people are doing, talking about what we're doing. It's like the constant intellectual activity is one. And then the second is the training of the junior scientists. And so I have undergraduates, graduate students, postdocs in my lab, and kind of just like getting them to develop their own projects and learn how to do science. And I think those are kind of like the two things that drive an academic scientist, right? I really like the training component.
Totally. Yeah.
Is what's driving me for academia, basically.
Yeah, that's so. I just kind of wanted to close it off by just asking. So for someone like me in high school or who's trying to figure out maybe what they want to do, what is some advice you have for like anyone who's like trying to decide what they might be interested in?
just try it out.
Definitely.
We're very used to like having undergraduates that want to come because they're thinking about medical school, they're thinking about what they want to do, and then sometimes they don't know, and that's fine. So just try it out. I mean, it's like, I know people are super scared because like, what if I don't like it? Well, if you don't like it, you know that you don't like it.
Right.
And it's part of the mission of the university
Mhm.
to help you figure out what you like and what you don't like. And actually, if you figure out you don't like it quickly, it's good.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's like there's nothing
Right. No, totally.
there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
So just try it out.
Mhm. Awesome. Thank you so much for the great advice and sharing your background and your story. I think it's really inspiring for people like me to hear things like this. And I kind of knew like what the path might be, but it was really helpful and amazing to hear like how you actually got from college to where you are now. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, absolutely. It was great to chat with you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of STEM Spark. Be on the lookout for STEM Spark's next episode coming shortly.